startups. And for this, I would like to invite a very special guest on stage for a keynote address, Shrikant Shastri, co-founder, Crayon Data, and chairperson of the Geospatial Data Promotion and Development Committee. Could we have you on stage, please?
So we heard from Shalini of ISRO a little while ago. Space is clearly the glamorous sector. Space and geospatial sectors got liberalized around the same time. But most people, when I took over this role of chairperson of this committee in December, I was asked 3 questions by most people. What is geospatial? What has been liberalized? And what are the startup opportunities? So I'm going to try and answer exactly those 3 questions here. So the best way to explain geospatial, which I take a very layperson approach, is when we all learned geography in school. We learned that location meant latitude, longitude, and elevation. But today, when you look at the technologies available to add a lot more features to a location, it's literally endless. Thanks to data coming from satellites, from GPS, from drones, from remote sensing, and from many other sources, you can add multiple layers of data to a location. For example, at each location, what is the precise weather? What's the soil condition? What is the level of humidity there? What is the traffic there? What's the population density? The list is literally endless. So each location can be defined in much richer terms. Now, as it happens, coincidentally, in December itself, my job to explain this became easier because there was this famous story of the truck trailer on which was mounted an old aircraft. It was being sent from Mumbai to Assam for junking. For some reason, all of these goes to Assam. Suddenly, what became media headline was that this truck trailer got stuck inside a tunnel in Motihari district in Bihar on the way. The truck trailer with the plane on it got stuck inside the tunnel. Why did that happen? Because no one told the truck driver that इस tunnel के अंदर ये इस size की truck plane के साथ नहीं जा सकती. Why did that happen? Because there wasn't enough location intelligence on the map which said that this tunnel can only take so much width and so much height, or there is this bridge which can only take so much weight, and that is the kind of situation you encounter when you don't build enough intelligence. And therefore, fundamentally, geospatial data means rich location intelligence. And if there was enough intelligence built into that map, the truck would not have got stuck there. So what does liberalization mean in this context? In India, all the data, for example, the data that Shalini spoke about from satellites, or data that comes from drones, or data that comes from other GPS sensors, soil data, temperature data, rain data, all of that is sitting inside different silos of the government. ISRO has the satellite data. Likewise, the weather department has weather data. Agriculture department has soil data. Now, without all that information being brought to one place, how do you build enough intelligence about a location? So under liberalization, there are 2 significant aspects that I want to talk about. The liberalization policy says the silos will get broken. All this data will now be made publicly available to any private company or any startup that wants to use that data. So just like UPI is a platform which is used for payments, we are creating a platform called UGI, Unified Geospatial Interface, into which through APIs, there will be data from every government department, satellite images, drone images, aerial survey images, soil data, weather data, all that data will come in. And if you're a startup, you can have access to that data to an easy-to-use interface to say, how can I use this data to make my business richer, make my business get a cutting technology edge? And by the way, geospatial industry is a $512 billion industry. In India, we've remained minuscule, mainly because it's been tightly regulated for national security reasons. The hope is that by liberalizing this, you can really unleash the creativity and innovation of the Indian private sector and startups. So what kind of opportunities exist for startups? Let me go back to the UPI and analogy once again. Because UPI got created, you had a whole fintech explosion. The Indian entrepreneurs really unleashed their creativity to build a whole range of fintech startups. So we believe that with geospatial data and a UGI platform, you can actually have a whole bunch of solutions and applications that can impact every sector of the economy, whether it's agriculture, whether it's transportation, livelihoods, financial services, healthcare, urban infrastructure. You can build applications in all these sectors. I'm going to give 3 examples. One is I was talking to a friend who's in the insurance sector. He says today, when I insure a new refinery or a factory, I have very few parameters available to assess the risk and charge a premium for that. Is it in an earthquake zone or not? But imagine with geospatial data, you can for each factory or refinery say, what is the risk of earthquake at this location, landslide, forest fires, cyclones, every possible calamity can be anticipated at that location, and you can personalize an insurance product based on the location of that company, for example. I'll take an example from healthcare. A friend who runs an Ayurveda company says, today in India, there are 7,000 manufacturers of Ayurvedic products. And Ayurvedic products use herbs, indigenous herbs, to create those products. And typically, manufacturers source these from local wholesalers or mandis. But imagine, purely because geospatial data becomes available through mapping of the country, the mapping of crops in the country, if I'm manufacturing a set of Ayurveda products, I can actually know where is the best herb for this particular product grown in the country. I can go work directly with the farmer and get the set of herbs that I want. That's an example for healthcare, for example. Then I can give you another example in urban infrastructure. Many of you may know that in the cities of India, most cities, corporations collect barely 40% of the property tax that they should be collecting. Why? Because properties have not been mapped well enough. It's hard to go out and map properties. But using space satellite images and a combination of other things, geospatial technologies allow you to map all of these properties well, and our property tax collections can go up. So as you can see, the possibilities are literally endless. So just as UPI changed our financial behavior by creating that digital public good, unleashed our creativity, our expectation is that in the next few years, we'll be able to do the same with geospatial data as well. Trucks and e-commerce deliveries can happen faster. Farmers will be able to plan their sowing, the irrigation, the harvesting in a much better manner. Insurance companies can create more targeted products. That's the promise and hope of the National Geospatial Policy. And we hope to see many more startups coming onto this bandwagon. We have a lot of consultation sessions going on with startups and private companies. So if there are startups in this room or at this event who want to talk, more than welcome. But what's interesting for me now is to have 3 panelists. I'm going to invite them on stage who will add more color to this. My first guest is Rakesh Verma, chairman of Map My India, which is one of the pioneers of Indian industry in this particular space. Rakeshji, please join us. Second is I have Nikhil Toshniwal. Nikhil, are you here? Yeah, Nikhil built a company called Farm Guide and sold it to Dehat, which is an agri-tech unicorn. And Nikhil will throw light from the agri sector. And I have Shankar Gaur from Hands On. Shankar has built a livelihood product, an app, which for blue-collar workers to find jobs. And again, he'll talk about how he's using geospatial data. So I'm going to invite all 3 of them here, and I'll join them. Hello. Rakeshji, you're clearly the pioneer in this room. So I have to start with you. The first question, everyone knows Map My India as a B2B product. Most of our cars have it. You also have a very successful consumer product now, Mapples, which is literally setting the world on fire. But I want to ask you, you started your business in an era which everything was totally regulated. You were almost hauled up so many times for ostensibly flouting the law. From then to now, in a liberalized, unregulated world, what hopes do you have?
Thank you, Shrikant. First, we never flouted the laws. Let me correct that. The only difference was it was not a level playing field. I have to give some background so that everybody can understand. Indian companies were not allowed to do things.
Yeah.
And that's what probably you meant flouting the laws. It was not flouting. It was sitting in the North Block and South Block 50% of my time to get approvals. We never did anything without approvals. But some people may think it otherwise, so be it. Anyway, leave that point there. See, for a startup, we were a startup. I'm a first generation entrepreneur. We found, or I felt that there's a gap. When the country doesn't have digital maps, what location intelligence can you bring in? So it was that idea, that conviction that led me to start it, going within the framework of the policies. Now, 20 years passed. I think I should talk more about post-liberalization. The post-liberalization, I was part of it. I was involved in many ways to make sure that these policies get changed. But to my utter surprise, the policies were totally removed. All the old policies were put in a waste paper basket. That was a great thing this government did. So what were the challenges pre and post? Pre, while we were succeeding, we were doing our job, we had customers, but the first problem was we had to give affidavit to every customer that if we are flouting the laws, we will be responsible and not our customers like Apple or Amazon or anybody. So that we had to, and how many companies will take the risk when they knew that there are policies like that? So the market was not growing. But the good side of it was we didn't have competition also. So if we didn't have competition, we kept growing. So that was number one change. Number two was a level playing field got established. Indian companies at least now can do things whatever they want to do. The third thing, the market started growing. Why? The market now understood that it is open to the Indian companies, so nobody is flouting the laws because nobody had the courage or strength to go and sit in North Block and South Block for doing their business. So this is the background I thought I'll tell you.
No, I was certainly not implying that you flouted the law. I was only trying to provoke you a bit to get your best out from you, but I'm glad you did that. Question for you, Nikhil. You sold a business to Dehat, and Dehat has become a unicorn. You provide inputs to farmers, all the input materials, fertilizers, seeds, etc. Then you provide a supply chain back to the retailers. So in this context, I know you particularly have come from a background where you help to plot the farm boundaries. Can you help us understand what is the method you use, what geospatial data do you use, and therefore how does the liberalization impact your work or make it easy for you?
Yeah. Thank you so much for the question and having me over here. So I will take your question in the two parts. One is that what does geospatial mean for agriculture, right? So if you think that, from an understanding that there's no institution which can afford to be at each and every farm, having an eyes on them, understand the requirement, and each and every farm has a very dynamic, change of status quo, health and all. So in that case, either the government working with the Patwari data, each of those data is something, aggregated data. And for anybody to create a right service, be it finance, insurance, or the market access for the farmers, one required to go hyper local. So geospatial is the only answer, not even an option for us. Now coming from a side of geospatial, that how are things been coming in? I would say that it's a lukewarm and to be bold, sir has opened the gate. So it had been a lukewarm journey, very small steps are being taken so far, but definitely in the right direction. But how are things have to improve? Why? So how do we go about the use case of geospatial data? So while working the farm guide, what our initial thought, just after my graduation from Delhi, the thought was that, if they are Google Maps, where you click upon an area, you get to have an insight, why not these in farm maps, right? You click upon any of the farm, you get to understand what's been happening on the farm, you get to understand what is required in the next 30 days of the particular farm. And if you go out and you see that everybody wants to help the farmer, or maybe everybody sees their business with that particular community having a 60% of the consumer base. So in that case, having a geospatial data. So the journey started all across that, how many villages are there and where are the village boundaries, like, and then when FarmGuide went ahead to digitize the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, which is currently running at the central government of India. So we were the only partner who was being told that devise a complete strategy. So while digitizing that and then digitizing PM Kisan, we realized is that in the approaches, a part is having an access to the cadastral maps. B is having an access to the real-time base maps. C is having an access to the, I would say, government-recognized satellite maps, satellite data. Because oftentimes, if we have an access to satellite data of European, so currently we did our approach utilizing Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2, which are European satellites, identified farm boundaries, trained the data around 21 lakh kilometers square. Then using neural network, we identified the farm boundaries because there was no cadastral data, right? And after digitizing that boundaries, then we went ahead, okay, now we require a hyperspectral imagery, but we found that there are limited channels for us to get that imagery from ISRO or the Indian satellites. So we have to rely upon like, Planet Labs or the Google satellites over there. However, getting the data from there, then remanufacturing, cloud coverage, removal, and then you end up into understanding, okay, what's happening on the farm. Now this complete cycle, if you look at, around 70% of the cost gets into getting the basic framework of the base map, getting an access to the satellite data, uh, training a model, and towards this question, and finally to conclude, is that these are three things which as a country, which we could have done away by having just a digital public good that which has various layers of these data set, training data set, and that digital public good also have the satellite data coming to it, which people can use it. Because there is no point in having that satellite data and not putting for or democratizing. So that's something which we found. And again, as I told, that geospatial is going to be the answer, and is the answer, where the complete financing and everything is being stuck about. So in the last policy, the democratization of the data, especially starting from these few data set and clubbing them into a DPG is something which we see.
So Nikhil, is it fair to say that simply by having access to data easily from Indian satellites and other sources, you'll be able to plot the farm boundaries correctly? You know what's happening in the farm, therefore you can give more farmers insurance, you can lend money to farmers, so economic value will go up for your business and farmers will benefit.
Correct.
Yeah?
There is no doubt to it, given that this helps any of the product or service provider to understand farm level risk, because that's the asset.
Right.
So if anybody get an option to monitor that asset in real time, then it's their business about what product or service they want to get to those people.
Right. Shankar, you run a very interesting business. The way I describe your business at Hands-On, I describe you as Zomato for jobs or Ola for jobs. Just like on Zomato or Ola, we open up the map and know where the nearest vehicle is, nearest restaurant is. At Hands-On, a blue-collar worker can open up a map and say, where's the nearest job, which job pays me 15,000 rupees for data entry operator, 20,000 rupees for something else. You're doing something remarkable with a great user experience. For you, how can this new open data scenario help you actually?
Sure, thanks, Srikanth. So, couple of things. So, if you look at historically what has happened, most of the job market products, let's say they were the like the wallet, the early stage wallets. Data is sitting, it is isolated, it is with a few companies, and to access that was a great challenge. With the new policy which is coming out and the democratization of data, I think what is going to happen is a lot of startups, once they have access to this data, they can build products around it. So for example, we at Hands-On today, to acquire a job seeker on our platform, or to acquire a business which is looking for workforce on our platform, we are basically paying money to get that information. And how? Who do we pay? We are paying Google Ads, we are paying Facebook, we are paying WhatsApp, we are paying, and I know, sir, you won't like it, we are paying Google Places API to get the lat long of the workforce where they live and of the businesses. But with the democratization, what's going to happen is, firstly, we stop paying big dollar amounts. And there is a reason behind what I am alluding to. The cost of acquisition in a blue collar space or an entry level gray collar space becomes so high because of these costs, the unit economics doesn't work out. So you'll see a lot of startups come into this space and then they die down. The only ones which have survived are typically in the upper gray collar or white collar space. So I think this is fantastic. If we are able to get data which can be consumed by startup like ours, who's working on not only jobs, but eventually would be into housing and skills development.
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing, skills development, healthcare, etc., as you rightly said. So I think that's going to be huge. And you will see a lot more players like fintech. So when it got deregulated, you saw all these companies come in, startups come in and create products. Similarly with the jobs marketplace, that's going to happen. So I think it's superb.
Rakeshji, because you are a veteran with so much experience, you've seen the bad times, hopefully you'll see some good times. What would your advice be if we have to replicate the success of the fintech world, for example, or even the liberalization of defense startups, the liberalization of space startups? What are the things that you think we should do and should not do?
Well, let me say from the government side what the government can do, because UPI has been done by the government, ONDC has been done by the government. I was speaking to you a little earlier also. Please do not get into the data making. First, data is so real time. Anybody who doesn't maintain the data, it's just take it from me, a year is enough for the data to go useless. There are some static data, few, but majority of them are that. So create a, if you rightly said it, UGI. Again, to do something, you wait for 3-4 years to create that UGI. It's not that simple either. Then the data people, if people just try to use the data in different formats, I think you lose time. It's a question of time, how fast you can get it. Create a UGI, allow government or the private organizations either to put their data so that API can be consumed, and anybody, once the API is there, you and I know applications can be built in matter of seconds. I can relate to my own example when during the pandemic time, when the app, what was that app, government app? COVID app, they needed us in the last minute, and they integrated our API with the COVID app just in 30 minutes. And the app was ready to be launched. So that's what is the power of any API, if the APIs are done well. So that's my suggestion.
So the data should be good and clean. It must be as real time as possible and make APIs available.
Right.
Right? Okay. Nikhil, you've been with the agri sector now for a while, earlier with your own venture, now Dehat. Besides the insurance and lending use cases that you spoke about, what are the other exciting use cases in agriculture that you think may be possible?
Oh, so starting from the land preparation, understanding that which area, which lands are getting into preparation, what's the current soil moisture, what's an organic carbon content of the particular area, extrapolating the soil test data set to understand how is the soil profile. That's the only area where it starts, where a person can understand, okay, this is an area suitable for this kind of variety, and hence this amount of dosage of fertilizers is being required. Talking about fertilizers, you can see that the quantum of the fertilizer which is being regulated goes to the last mile farmer. So that's an area where how to optimize the fertilizer dosage starts from this particular thing. Then going forward in the areas where we have found that as soon as the farmers sow, there are certain very common pests, very common pests which has been there since like past 15 years, and it does provide a good amount of guilt to understand that it's been 15 years since these pests are so much of common in the regions of Gujarat, Maharashtra, like pink ball army in cotton. So that's an area where you see that this could have been done by the right prediction models, because each and every pest attacks from a certain crop stage, certain humidity and temperature in the soil geographies. So these are the four things which a data can readily provide, right? Satellite data can understand that what's the current crop stage over there. So early warning systems into the pest, that's the second thing. Hence, based on that, advisory to the farmers. Then thirdly, when it comes to spraying, so we talk about drone spraying because that's something which is going to come after, not for all the crop allergens, but at least for the certain crop allergens where it is necessary to have something to spray the liquid fertilizers which we are being producing now at a scale. So in that case, having the drone to operate, again, the complete data set has to come from a geospatial data, such that, because otherwise the unit economics, if each and every person has to take out his drone, geo map, again, that's something that's too much of a cost, right? Once he is being moving the drone to just map, and secondly, then he is spraying. So he's doing twice the work because the first thing is
The
being
drone
not being
should
available.
only continue to spray, someone else is providing the intel.
Correct. So that's something, however, that is something which can come as a DPG or what sir said in the form of any of the, I would say warehouses. So, and then comes the harvesting when any of the company, we work with like, Unilever, Cargills, all the set of people. And yet you think about a trader like LDC, they talk about, okay, what's the current crop health? Should I start planning my procurement with that? It's all because of geospatial data. You get to understand what's a growing sun days, what's a crop status, when it could be cut. Basis on that, people can have a prioritization of the area because none of the company can place their human resources all across the region to be rightly ready. Everybody has to optimize. That predictability can only come from this geospatial. So the journey is since the
All of this, the full value chain.
full value chain.
And you mentioned early warning systems. A lot of agriculture in India gets impacted by locust attacks.
Correct.
Now you can predict that based on wind direction, humidity, and all of that
Yeah.
about where locust is going to hit and take.
Like Kenya has done that.
Yeah.
Think
Exactly.
about Kenya government has done that. Yeah.
Shankar, you have already used maps very smartly to help job seekers find jobs. What else can you do to help the livelihood cause of this country?
Sure. So, Shrikant, couple of things. So, jobs is in the top of the hierarchy. But if you look at people, obviously want jobs which is near to where they live, or if they move to a new location to find a new job, affordable housing
Yeah.
near the place of work is a big problem. So, one of the use cases is we could solve that. That also helps reduce the commute time, and lesser the commute, more people stick to their jobs.
Yeah.
So there is a element of retention which is there. This is number one. Number two, skills. So through the way we have built our platform, we can track the skills of blue and gray collar workers. What that means is I can show a cluster of skills in a particular geography, and then that data can be used by the companies or by the governments, to point any new industry coming in that area.
So you know that there are so many textile workers in this with so much density in this area, so you know where to go and hire.
Correct. And if you look at like some hard data, so 40% of the tax collection in India comes from Delhi and Mumbai. And if you look at like some states like Bengal, Kolkata contributes 50% of the state GDP. Bangalore contributes 50% of the Karnataka GDP. Now, the immediate thought is rich city, rich state, poor state. But what is feeding into that? Your workforce from tier 4, tier 3 is actually moving to these cities. And something which we are already enabled to do on hands-on is we can track the movement and we can create a heat map and actually show this person was in this part of Bihar 5 months ago, has actually moved to Kolkata for a new job. and we can track the skills also because we have
Help him find a job,
that
help him
person.
upgrade his skills, help him,
Correct.
and help him find an affordable
Correct.
place to
So
live.
you can build an entire ecosystem using geospatial data.
In big, bold red, we've got a message which says time is up. So I think we should be obedient. And therefore, let's stop because I know the sessions are running late. And that's a good deed we can do at the end of the day. But Rakesh, Nikhil, and Shankar, thank you very much. I know we had a short time, but I think we got some great insights. Thank you very much. I know we're going to keep collaborating, and I'm sure we'll collaborate with others in the audience also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shrikant. I'll just request all our guests to stay on stage, please. Could we have a small token of appreciation for all our guests and a huge round of applause, please? We'd also like to thank Inclusion Partner Vishesh, Mentoring in Motion Partners, Miles and Cars on Rent, Media Partner Economic Times, and Integrated Communication Partner Jabalpur Brand Consultancy.